Hello, this is Sierra and welcome to another video. Today we are starting to read chapter 15 of Hermitcraft Genesis, Perspective Grian. I don't know how long it'll be, how many chapters we'll get to. I'm hoping to finish this book 1 today, but if we don't, that's fine. But yeah, we should probably get right into it. And well, get ready. This is the episode where they come in. If you know, you know. I have finally gotten to the point where we might get to see some new faces. Or, well, technically not new, but maybe new to some people. Chapter 15. Get behind me, Carl commanded, charging forward as he stood protectively in front of Connor, Hugh, and Lily. He extended his sword as he ordered his men to surround the hermits. Grian's eyes couldn't leave the scene before them as one of the men shouted, "Halt!" The sound of metal being unsheathed filled the air in unison as many of the dozen men there pulled out their swords as well. Grian looked around to see the cause members coming out of the hole, 5 of them, not including Carl himself, surrounding Jem, Pearl, and Grian. Jem was tightly holding beat-ups in her arms as Pearl stood in front of her. Both girls' expressions were firm, like soldiers. "And why do you think we'll do that?" one of the cause members called back. Grian inched closer to Liam, pulling out his sword as he looked over at Pearl, meeting her gaze, seeing her eyes moving over to the blade in his hand. "Does this have to come to a fight?" Grian thought, watching as the enemy closed the gap between them. The hallway seemed to close in around him, smaller than he remembered. Perhaps just cramped. "They won't let us go that easily." Jem's voice filled his mind as Grian looked over his shoulder again, meeting her eyes. "They'll hurt anyone who gets in their way. Shouldn't have come. It's too late now," Grian told her simply, looking straight ahead, finding Kate and Liam on either side of him. From the corner of his eye, he could see Connor pulling the 2 children closer to himself. The men stopped walking, blocking their exit. "It would be a wise choice to stand aside," one of the men across from them said, his chin high, defiance. He didn't have a sword on him, yet he stood tall. Grian tightened his grip on the hilt of his sword. "Did you have much of a choice?" "She's disappointed in your actions today, Connor. If I were you, I'd give up on your little jailbreak right here, right now. And maybe someone won't get hurt. Someone always gets hurt." Connor's voice shook, pulling Hugh and Lily even closer. "Someone always has to get hurt when I'm around. And perhaps you can prove yourself. Your loyalty, Connor." The man narrowed his eyes. "Take one of the hermits with you. The girl and the boy. Come here." Connor tensed, looking up at the group of men in front of them, stormy gray eyes raging with fury. "I'm not going to let you hurt someone my friends care about. I'm not going to let her make me hurt others anymore. I never wanted this. I would have rather died than this." "So be it," the man said darkly, turning to his men. "Kill anyone who opposes you. Capture the hermits." He smiled as he turned back, his eyes meeting Grian. The man pulling out an interpearl, feeling small against the man's hungry gaze. Grian feeling small and the man's hungry gaze. Yeesh. I hope you understood that sentence. "Even the children?" One of the men frowned. "Mister, I never spared the children," another soldier sneered. "Why should we? There'll always be a problem later if we don't take them down now." "Leave them alone," Jem growled. Grian looked back to see her stand tall, her green eyes ablaze with rage. "You've done enough harm already." "Clearly not," the lead man said darkly, with a smile, raising his interpearl. Grian felt a hand grab his arm, seeing Liam beside him, watching the pearls that appeared in some of the men's hands. "Whew!" Grian looked back at Gem and Pearl, glancing down at his blade, before he hurled it toward them, and a cry broke out. Attack! The sword went flying as Pearl leapt and caught it into the air, followed by enderpearls flying all around them, shattering as the men reappeared on every side, charging at the cause members who came to the YouTuber's defense. Grian was pulled aside as Liam stepped in front of him, one of the men appearing, charging at the boy. Their swords clashed as Grian gulped, scrambling for the gas blaster in his pocket, pulling it out and looking up as he spotted Connor doing the same. Instinctively, Grian ran over to him, just as one of the men tried to attack the boy from behind, firing the gas blaster, hitting the man as he screamed, the man slamming against the wall. Connor jumped, his eyes wide as he saw the soldier lying a few feet from him. Try not to hit our allies. This is a very grim space, Grian encouraged. Kate stood behind the children, having followed him. Liam wasn't far behind, finally knocking out his opponent before coming to his aid. Connor nodded, raising his fire blaster. Grian could see the boy's hands were shaking as he attempted to aim and fire. Grian fired his his gas blaster again, sending another enemy hurtling down the hall with a scream, his body ablaze with the hungry flames. Grian kept looking around, trying to make sure no one tried to sneak up from behind as Kate pushed one of the attackers back with her sword. Connor firing the fire blaster just after as the man disintegrated into dust. I don't want to know what would happen if that hit one of you guys. Kate looked over her shoulder at Grian. Grian shuddered at the comment, but pushed the mental image aside. Adrenaline filled him as he reached out his mental hand. Impulse? Are you okay? Grian asked, firing another blast at one of the men trying to attack Gem from behind. She was doing her best to stay close to Pearl or one of the protectors, keeping B-dubs close to her, sometimes giving a good kick or headbutt whenever she got a chance. She'd had that lesson too. We're safe. Blake's getting Julius out of the machine he's strapped into, Impulse replied. A wave of anger rose, hitting Grian, blazing as hot as fire. If you get the chance, can you give us a hand? I'm not able to do much with my blaster in this cramped hallway, Grian insisted. Try moving them toward the intersection, Impulse encouraged. That way they have some of us escape. We can have some of us escape with any injured. Beat up is hurt, Grian warned, feeling a wave of worry crush over him. He needs immediate help. I'll let Scar know. Help will come, Impulse replied firmly. Remember what I said. Move the party closer to the intersection. Grian didn't reply, looking back at his friends. Cause members and the children. Because the children. Even though they'd taken out some of the men, they were still outnumbered. Guys, push forward. Got an idea. What's the plan? Liam asked curiously, shoving another man aside as the group started marching forward, trying to push their attackers back. Impulse is the plan. Grian smiled at his protector. Oh, fudge. Grian smiled at his protector, his eyes shining. Looks like his luck continues. He's getting help. Grian nodded. And Julius? I assume he's okay, Grian sighed, looking over his shoulder to see Gem and Pearl charging toward them, Carl at their heels. Whatever they did to him did not make Impulse happy. Let's do everything we can to help him, Liam said with a smile, holding his sword high, keeping his eyes scouring the area. Hopefully this plan of yours works, Grian, Carl said, looking back over his shoulder as Pearl pushed one of the last few men back. Bodies littered the hallway, some of them their own, others of the enemy. There's not much of a choice, Grian surmised. She can always send more men after us. We can't stay here. No, we certainly can't, a voice said from behind the hermit. Grian jumped, turning to see Blake standing a few feet from the intersection, smiling at the hermit. In his arms, he held Julius, who looked just as pale and weak as Beat-Up's did. Come on, it's safe to make a run for it. Where's Impulse? Kate asked, looking at the boy with surprise. He wanted to grab some things first from the labs. Blake shrugged. I was hoping to head right back after I took care of Julius. I'll take him, Carl suggested. The children and Beat-Ups will come with me. I'm not leaving without Impulse. Kate thumped her foot down defiantly as Carl took Julius from Blake. Yes, you are. Carl narrowed his eyes at the girl. You've done plenty already. Last I recall, Clara specifically told you to wait. My friends were in trouble, Kate insisted. The man smiled. Sometimes patience will grant you an opportunity. You're fortunate that nothing happened to you or your friends. She looked down at her feet, her shoulders slumped. I'm not leaving until I know my friends are safe. All of them. Impulse is safe, Blake said. Otherwise, I'd get a distress signal, or fellow hermits would have said something. Kate hesitated, looking up at Blake, who was standing beside her. She met his gaze, her bottom lip trembling. Are you sure? Blake started to nod, when suddenly a scream came from down the hallway, as Grian froze, looking to see Kate tense, before she broke off into a run. Caitlin, wait! Carl shouted. I don't even know what I just said. Starting to go for her when Liam put a hand on his shoulder. We'll get her, Liam told him simply. Get everyone else to safety. The man relented as he sighed, Blake already running after the girl. Another scream filled the air as Grian finally broke from his stillness, following his friends down the hall. We're coming! Kate cried, arriving at a lab door, shoving it open as she froze in place, her eyes going wide with horror, just as a large hand extended and pulled her in, slamming the door closed. Well, you're fortunate that that's not the only part we're going to end it on, because more fun, exciting stuff is coming. Chapter 16. Get ready. Chapter 16. Blake raced to the door, shortly followed by Liam. Blake shoved it open, running inside, with Grian just behind him. Grian gaped at the small space before the trio. It was a laboratory, with tables, beakers, vials, syringes, and brewing stands. Everything you would expect from a lab. Tools hung against the wall, between a counter and cupboards against the far wall. A woman stood by the far table, her dark blonde hair pulled back in a tight ponytail. Her eyes moved toward the door, wearing a white lab coat that glowed in the lamplight, contrasted against a dark purple tank top and black skinny jeans. There were 3 large men in the room with her, and a young assistant examining a control panel. The machine rose beside the assistant, lying out horizontally. Grian could see a figure strapped inside. Bring her over here, the doctor commanded as 2 of the large men had held a struggling Kate, as the men dragged her across the room. Let her go! Impulse cried. Grian spotted the older hermit pinned against the wall by the 3rd guard, who was twice his size. Imagine that! The soldier's muscles bulged, almost straining against the black fabric of the uniform. The man held Impulse to the wall tightly, even as the hermit attempted to free himself. Let her go! I will make that decision, Impulse, she said calmly, her eyes narrowing toward the hermit. You should have left when you had the chance. A groan came from the figure in the machine. The pained look filled Impulse's face, turned to rage. What are you doing to him? Only finishing what my colleague started, the doctor replied, her eyes moving to the new arrivals. Ah, good. You brought the other one. Grian tensed as Liam stepped in front of him protectively. Let go of me, Kate protested as she was shoved into an empty seat beside the woman. The doctor's face softened as she looked at the young teenager, looking her up and down. "What's your name, child?" "Caitlin." Kate glowered at the woman. The woman nodded, putting a hand on the girl's shoulder as one of the guards strapped her wrist to the chair. "I was intending for your friend Impulse to sit here, but not everything has to go to plan. You're just what I was looking for." "Want with that?" The girl spat as the two guards looked over at the woman, who nodded over to the three by the door. "Grab the hermit," she said firmly. "Knock the other two out if you have to. I'll need them later." "Grian, run!" Impulse screamed as the two guys turned toward the door. Grian reached for his pocket, going for the gas blaster when suddenly someone grabbed him from behind. The hermit squeaked as a hand fell over his mouth. "Grian!" Liam and Blake whirled around, Liam lunging toward the hermit's attacker as pearls flew through the air toward them. Grian struggled against the tight grip, his eyes wide as the men reappeared behind the protectors, sending them falling to the floor. Excuse me, let me edit something real quick. Let me edit something. Because there's a repetition here that I do not want to read aloud, so. Grian watched in horror as the two soldiers pinned the two boys to the ground, effortlessly knocking them out. Noticing the occasional deep red bubbles coming off the men, Reed shuddered. The memory of Scar's account of when Gerald tried to kill him before Julius and the others intervened. Gerald had stolen a potion of strength from Gem's storage to gain an advantage, just as these men were using strength against them. "Toss the boys aside and bind them," the doctor commanded. As the two soldiers dragged the boys aside, Grian felt himself being shoved forward, hearing the man's steady heartbeat, a far contrast to the terror swarming through him, seeing Kate squirming against the restraints. "Let him go!" Kate demanded to the woman as Grian was shoved beside Impulse, the two men standing guard in front of them. As Grian gasped for breath, meeting Impulse's eyes, looks of horror and defiance flickered within the deep brown. "Well, they will not be harmed, Caitlin," the woman said calmly. "At least, not today." "Not physically," Impulse spat, looking worriedly over at the machine. The figure inside had gone quiet. "I can feel it, Dr. Rhinestone. I can feel what you're doing to him." "Who?" Grian whispered. Impulse glared at Dr. Rhinestone, likely not answering the younger hermit's question. Of course it wouldn't be a story if it did. Fascinating, Rhinestone mused, turning to the table as she picked something off the tray. It was a syringe with red liquid inside, swirls of blue and purple twirling in the mix. "As I was explaining to Impulse here before you were so rudely interrupted, Stephen and I were working together on a secret project, unbeknownst to Mr. A. or Campbell at the time. I'm delighted to say that one of our experiments has been quite successful. Stephen knew about what happened to Impulse's friend, and wondered what would happen if he could prolong the torture for as long as he desired, without the worry of losing the victim. It was Julius's idea." The color drained from Impulse's face, still glaring at the woman as Grian met eyes with Kate. "This is impossible," Impulse snapped at the woman. "This is wrong." "Is it?" Dr. Rhinestone raised an eyebrow, pushing part of Kate's sleeve of her bright tie-dye t-shirt. "Yeah, that's a bit wordy." Kate tried to pull away, but the woman held her arm firmly with one hand. "Is this all you ever wanted? To see your friend again? Tears filled Impulse's eyes. Grian reached over to his friend, touching his arm. You could feel Impulse shaking against his touch, but the older hermit didn't meet his gaze. Let him go, Rhinestone. His voice was barely audible. Grian glanced over at the machine again. The assistant stood by the control panel, straight and alert, awaiting orders from the doctor. It had me wonder, Dr. Rhinestone continued. Who else could we bring back? If we can bring back YouTubers thanks to the regenerative healing factor, is it possible to bring back a descendant? A hybrid? What are you talking about? Grian demanded, his eyes moving back to the woman, who was unnervingly close to Kate. A hand firmly on the girl's shoulder as Kate tried to free herself. I think you know very well what I'm talking about, she smiled darkly. All we need was a blood sample from the individual, which we had for his friend. She nodded over an Impulse. After the incident that almost crushed one of our own. No, Impulse gasped. His eyes widened. You can't! All I need is a host, preferably a human, Rhinestone said calmly, looking over at the girl. Your parents are Robert and Lyra Kimberly, correct? How do you know my parents? The woman smiled. I occasionally exchanged supplies with your father. He talked much about you. Such a strong and loyal companion. You're perfect for my little experiment. What are you going to do to me? Kay looked up at the woman, her determination evaporating. Grian watched as Impulse struggled to get to his feet. One of the men knocked him down as Impulse groaned, trying again. The soldier grabbed him, thrusting him to the ground, as the two struggled to get the upper hand of the other. This is a new beginning, a new turn for Project Genesis. You should be proud to be sitting here. Rhinestone smiled at the girl, not looking at the hermits. Grian! Impulse wrestled against the guard as the second man pounced on the older hermit. Don't let her use that syringe! Grian looked over, seeing the doctor and the team looking at each other. As he scrambled to his feet, he charged toward the two of them, hearing footsteps behind him and the shadow of a pearl as he swerved out of the way of one of the men trying to grab him. Kate! Grian cried, watching in horror as Dr. Rhinestone placed the point of the syringe on the girl's arm. This won't hurt too much, child, Rhinestone said softly, as Kate looked back over at the hermit. Her eyes grew wide. Behind you, Grian! She cried, just as the woman pierced her arm. The girl screamed as the doctor pressed down on the syringe, the swirling liquid entering the girl's body. Grian lunged toward the woman, just when he felt arms wrap around him, sending him hurtling to the floor. No! Impulse's cry filled the room. Grian groaned against the weight of the man crashing down on him. Trying to get up, Kate's screams died down as the hermit looked up, seeing her sitting still in the chair, her head leaning back. Her green eyes were hazy, blank. Her mouth was open slightly, breathing heavily as Rhinestone put the now empty syringe into a cauldron filled with water. Tears filled Grian's eyes as he groaned again, fighting against the man pinning him down on the floor. Take the hermits and the girl to a holding cell, Dr. Rhinestone replied firmly. What about the escapees? The man on top of Grian asked. We'll recapture them another time, Dr. Rhinestone brushed aside. I have what I came for anyway. She smiled at Grian. You're going to be a huge help for me. Never, Grian gasped, falling to the floor a third time. I'll never help you. Neither will she. She's only the beginning. Dr. Rhinestone beamed at the hermit, her eyes cold and hard as she stared at him. Mr. A had many hopes for her. Once I'm able to release him and his brother from their cells, we'll be unstoppable. Not even you will be able to stop what's coming. You have to find them first, Grian seized, groaning again as the man bore his knees into the hermit's back. We will find them, Dr. Rhinestone said. She unclasped the restraints from Kate's wrists and gestured for the guards. Take them away. A lump formed in Grian's throat as he was dragged to his feet, the men holding his arms fast behind him. The second guard walked over to the girl, lifting her off the chair and throwing her limply over his shoulder. A purple bruise was starting to form on his shoulder, but a syringe had pierced her skin. What about the skids? Impulse demanded. Grian inhaled a sharp breath, looking back to see his friend looked beaten. A black eye forming on the hermit as the hermit glared at the woman. The subject will stay here in the meantime, she replied, walking to the far wall as a passage opened. The boys will be put in another cell. If they resist, I give the soldiers full permission to eliminate them. Grian choked back a cry as he looked over to where Liam and Blake were lying, his tears blurring their unconscious figures. He looked away, unable to face them, unable to think about what she might do to them, to his friends. Not if we have anything to say about it, a familiar voice stated, as heat filled the room, followed by a scream as the assistant was hurled against the control panel, catching it on fire. Yeah, intense. Chapter 17. Skids! Impulse screamed as the fire consumed the control panel, spreading quickly toward the machine where the still figure lay. Grian didn't look to see his friend's expression as Josh bolted for the room, into the room, unlatching the glass cylinder surrounding the figure and shoving it open. Grian gasped, seeing sure enough a tall man with a tan complexion lying on the table. He wore a white tank top and black jeans, his fuzzy black hair damp against the pillow that his head rested on. The man's arms and legs strapped to the cot. Josh tore off the straps with a pair of shears, Luke charging at one of the men who had been holding Impulse that had attempted to stop the other boy. He came from behind the man, holding Grian as the man holding Grian grunted in pain. Loosening his grip, Grian took the chance to slip away from him, watching in shock as the man disintegrated at his feet. You're not hurt, G? Scar's sing-song voice came from the doorway. Grian looked up, seeing his friend holding the fire blaster he'd seen Connor using earlier. Caleb and Isaac were behind him, swords extended. As Impulse stumbled to his feet, Josh and Luke ran from the blaze, Josh carrying the limp form of the YouTuber Grian had been told was dead. I'm okay, Grian stammered, his legs jelly under him. Scar rolled over to him with his free hand. His eyes looked over Grian's shoulder with a frown. Grian followed his gaze to see a pile of items lying on the floor, Kate in the middle of it. Her eyes were now closed, but she looked ghostly pale against the lamp glow. Kate! Grian scrambled to the girl, falling to his knees as he reached for her. Relieved when he felt her pulse, he wiped the tears from his eyes as he checked her over. The men hadn't hurt her. There was no other bruises apart from the one forming on her shoulder. What happened? Scar whispered, rolling up behind him as Grian wiped. Ugh! We don't need that repetition. Hey. Oh, come on. That was uncalled for. Thank you. She injected him with Gerald's blood. Grian spat. A wave of nausea threatened to take hold. They had a blood sample of his, which is probably how they found out he was a hybrid. Scar gasped. Grian looking up to see his friend put a hand to his mouth. His green eyes a mix of shock and horror. No, it can't be. What will it do to her? She didn't know. Impulse said sourly near the door. She needed a human patient to test it. Just so happened Kate came running to her doorstep. No, Scar said softly, his face growing pale. So Skiz was... I don't know. Impulse said, I don't know anything about any of this, Scar. His dark brown eyes were wild, his voice shaking, his bottom lip trembling. Impulse turned away, shoulders rising and falling, as Luke walked over to him, pulling the hermit into a hug, as the hermit sobbed. Grian watched in silence for a moment, unsure of what to say or do. What could he say when Impulse's best friend had been brought back to life? When the hermit had seen him die? Figure this out, Scar said, putting away the fire blaster as he rolled up to his friend. He put a hand on Impulse's shoulder. The older hermit hiccuped. I'm sorry you had to see this. We're here. You're not the only one with under such questions. Scar. Impulse whimpered as Grian rose to his feet, seeing Isaac walking toward him, stopping beside him. She wouldn't go with Carl, Grian said to the older teen, meeting his eyes. She wanted to protect her friends at all costs. Reminds me of some friends I know. Isaac put a hand on the hermit's shoulder. There's a lot of putting hands on people's shoulders. He smiled. Gosh! I try to make it better. She has amazing people to look up to. But Grian looked over at the girl lying at his feet. Let's get everyone upstairs, figure out what to do from there. Isaac said gently, squeezing the hermit's shoulder. Okay. Hopefully I can finish this chapter. If not, I'll just record a little bit more. It's no big deal. Grian let out a shaky breath as Isaac pulled the hermit into a hug. Grian didn't want to let go, even when his eyes moved to find where Josh was standing, still holding Skiz in his arms. You could see the YouTuber's chest was steadily rising and falling. His eyes closed, hiding the smoldering blue eyes. This man is the biggest unanswered question of them all. Thanks, Impulse, for that description. I had to put it in there somewhere. I thought that was fitting. Grian stared up at the plain white ceiling overhead. The sun had long since passed the large window in the meeting area. Grian leaned against the couch, trying to make sense of everything that happened the previous evening. Grian wasn't able to get any sleep when he returned to the base with his friends. Haley and Liam had gotten right to work, tending to beat up Julius, Skiz, and Kate, working throughout the remainder of the night and into the morning. Blake had pitched in as well, checking in on everyone else for minor injuries. There was no point sleeping when everything was chaos. How had things gone so badly? Grian asked himself. The memories of the underground base played in his mind. He heard a soft jingle of bells just outside the room, in the hall, followed by giggles. Carl went to check in with Tony to see if there was space for Connor and his new friends. The man promised he'd be back as soon as he could. Grian barely got all of that, even if his mind was a whirlwind of thoughts and emotions. I should have tried harder to keep her from going. Why couldn't I have tried harder to stop it? Was there anything I could have done? Is it my fault? Grian? A voice cut into his thoughts. Grian blinked, looking over to see Clara sit down next to him on the couch, her eyebrows knit with concern. I thought you were with Julius, Grian whispered, looking away from her as he sat up straighter on the couch. I was, but Blake took over for me, she replied quietly, shaking her head. Will everyone be okay? Grian asked, hating how his voice cracked as guilt pounded on his emotional wall. I believe so, she nodded solemnly. B-Dubs is almost already at full recovery after a dose of strength. She looked over at the hermit. Skiz hasn't woken up yet. Impulse hasn't left his side. Don't stop staring at him. Can you blame him? He watched his best friend die in his arms, and Dr. Rhinestone dared to bring him back just to torture him again. Clara winced and nodded. I wish I had known. I wouldn't have left him down there. He was dead, Clara. Grian bit his bottom lip. I saw the pain and heartache on Impulse's face. He told us. That was his best friend. I was his protector, Clara reminded the hermit. He couldn't have known. Grian swallowed, looking over at us sympathetically. I don't think even Impulse fully knew. Why? Why would she do that? Clara said softly, shaking her head in bewilderment. Why would Stephen do that? He got the idea from Julius, Grian clenched his fist, letting out a slow breath. When he was tormenting Impulse, before Scar lost his ability to walk, before... Sorry. She put a hand on the hermit's shoulder. I know none of this was my fault, but I hate the fact that you all had to go through that. It's not fair. It's not. Grian agreed, not meeting her gaze. We'll figure this out, Clara promised, squeezing the hermit's shoulder. We'll do whatever it takes to find those answers and stop those people from causing more harm. I might have a few, Connor's voice spoke up from the hallway. Grian looked up, seeing the boy's stormy gray eyes, full of emotions the hermit couldn't read. Before you guys came along, I was already planning on getting away, finding a safe place for me and the kids. He put a hand in his pocket. I wanted to find Liam's aunt, or at least someone who knew her. I thought she'd want to know what I learned. Connor winced as he pulled a stack of paper out of his pockets. There's nothing about the kids in here, but might explain what happened to beat-ups. Clara rose to her feet, crossing the room. She took the stack of papers from Connor. Thank you, Connor. Tears filled the young man's eyes as he looked over at Grian. Sorry. Grian frowned, tilting his head. Before, I helped test that gadget they put on him, the young man mumbled, staring at his feet. They made me use the gadget to drain the lives of... I don't even want to say it. So don't, Clara said. Hugh and Lily lingered behind them, peeking around the corner. You made the right choice, yet, just like my son did. That's all that matters. They made me inject him. Connor had looked up at the woman. They made me put the syringe and poison into your son. Clara pulled the boy into a hug, holding him tight. You'll be okay. How can you be so sure? Connor sniffled. Because we've got people who here who don't give up. Clara rubbed her hand along the young man's back. Kate's mother was sick, and they were able to heal her. Please don't hate me, Connor whispered. No one hates you, Grian said, meeting the boy's eyes. I'm the one with trust issues, and I certainly don't. But... Connor shook his head, pulling away. After what happened to Lovely World, I thought no one wanted anything to do with me. Sammy asked about you. Grian rose to his feet. When Sam told him his home was attacked, he asked about you and Mr. James. Even though Connor. Grian smiled. Sammy's been through a lot, including friends unknowingly helping his enemies due to lies and manipulation. Connor's eyes widened as he stood, as still as a statue. Looking into Grian's eyes, Grian pulled him away and took a step closer. Really? Sam told me, an impulse what happened. Grian insisted. Where he was, what he was doing when that man called him about Liam's disappearance. When Levi told him about what happened to his home, everyone was gone. Levi looked everywhere for you, Connor. Grian pressed, seeing tears falling down the boy's face, trying to find anyone who survived. His base wasn't destroyed until later. I didn't know about it. Connor looked down at his feet, shame filling his expression. None of what happened is your fault, another voice said, behind as Liam appeared around the corner. None of it. Connor nodded, looking over at Liam, the shame crumbling away for a moment. I didn't want him to do it. I know, Liam said gently, putting a hand on Hugh and Lily's shoulders. You're a good friend, Connor. Thank you. You're thanking me? Connor's eyes widened. Again? You did save Beeta's life, Liam raised an eyebrow. Did you not? You're right. Connor looked away again. Any news from Carl yet? We should hear back soon, Clara replied, pocketing the papers the young man had given her. The sooner you three are somewhere safe, the better. While you would be safe here, I do feel like some people wouldn't approve. Connor frowned, looking over at Grian with uncertainty. None of the hermits think that, Grian pointed out matter-of-factly. Right, Clara agreed. Some of our allies were only okay with some of the teens being here when we promised to continue their training and education. We could learn here, Lily said defiantly, her eyes flashing determinedly. I like the kitty. Clara smiled at the girl, kneeling beside her. I don't know what will happen right now, but I know there are a lot of families with kitties of their own who would love a lovely girl like you. I'm staying with her, Hugh said. I'll make sure they consider that. Clara nodded to the little boy. But we are respecting Connor's choices here. When you're older, you can decide for yourself which path you want to take. Do we have to fight? Lily asked nervously. No, Liam assured her, squeezing her shoulder gently. You can still help without needing to fight. We're always on the lookout for people who are willing to host safe houses. Maybe I could do that, Connor offered, his eyes sparkling with inspiration. It's a lot of work, Liam warned, looking over at his friend. I can't stand in the sidelines anymore, Liam. I can't stand here and watch as people get hurt, regardless of who they are, Connor demanded. It's wrong. Bring it across the house, Clara suggested, getting to her feet again. In the meantime, try to relax and have some fun. All three of you. It's been a while since you've been a kid. Not too long, Connor blushed. No. Then go have fun. Clara encouraged as the two kids ran down the hall, squealing with joy as they chased each other. We'll be keeping an eye out for trouble. I would recommend not going outside right now. Yes, ma'am, Connor replied gratefully, disappearing down the hall after the kids. He's a good kid, Clara said, letting out a heavy sigh. In the wrong place at the wrong time. He'll find his way, Liam said, wherever that leads him. What about your father? Clara asked, Grian, seeing the boy's hopeful voice, grumbled. Campbell wouldn't have given him a chance to let him get away. Liam shook his head. He's gone. I'm so sorry, Liam. Clara shook her head, wrapping an arm around the boy's shoulder. He'll be fine. Liam looked up at her with a small smile. Got a new family now. There's nothing anyone can do to take that from me. Liam looked over at Grian. Hermit returned the smile, his heart swelling, seeing the boy in front of him, his protector, his friend. Suddenly, the kitchen door opened, as footsteps walked into the main area from the hallway. Grian turned, spotting Jem pocketing a communicator, her expression unreadable. Can I talk to you for a minute, Clara? Jem asked, scuffing a foot on the hardwood floor hesitantly. Is everything okay? Clara's brow furrowed as she left Liam's side, crossing the room. Everyone's fine. It's just... Jem shook her head, lifting her hand to her face to wipe a tear from her eyes. Joel heard about what happened, and Clara put her hand on Jem's shoulder, beating the hermit's eyes, which were still sparkling with tears. How's Pearl doing? Okay, Jem sniffed, looking away from the woman. After losing Noah, it's just... I know, Clara said softly, squeezing the young woman's shoulder. We did everything we could. Grian bit his bottom lip, looking down at his lap, flashes of the ambush the previous night, seeing Pearl's protector fighting one of the men, seeing him lying on the ground where the soldier stabbed him with a poisoned blade. Joel wanted to stop by. He's bringing his two protectors, Jem said, barely above a whisper. He called me just minutes after I made the report. Sergeant. Clara frowned, letting go of Jem's shoulder as her arm fell to her side. That's what he said? Mm-hmm. Jem nodded, wiping another wave of trickling tears from her face. He didn't tell me what, but something's going on. If there was a problem, he would have told Rose about it, Clara assured her gently. When was the last time he spoke to her? Jem asked. Grian looked up, noticing Liam from the corner of his eye, his brows furrowed, frowning. Clara looked away, turning to the other two in the room. We should get everyone together to discuss when Joel gets here. Is everyone okay? Grian asked, hitting how small his voice sounded as he met Jem's eyes. Yeah, I like that better. There we go. Oops. Semicolon instead of apostrophe. And we're good. I hope so. Jem bit her bottom lip. Carl told us they were safe. That he and Cody would make sure of it, Liam replied. I believe that. Jem nodded, looking over at the boy. Joel, you sounded insistent. We'll figure this out, Clara said, turning back to Jem. In the meantime, can you get everyone together? Yes, ma'am. Jem smiled, standing straight before turning and leaving the room. I'll be back. Grian watched her go, his heart growing heavy, like 1,000 anvils were bearing down on his chest, crushing everything inside him. Was Sven okay? Was it worth trying to call them? Was that too dangerous? He heard footsteps, looking up as Liam took a seat beside him on the couch, beating his eyes. You okay? I want to be, Grian whispered, shaking his head. But after seeing what Stuart did to them, to their home, Stuart is gone, Liam said. He can't come back. Even when we're into those experiments? Grian swallowed. She would have needed a blood sample from him, Liam said calmly. Even though he was badly burned during the rescue mission, I don't think she would have had something like that. He was human. Okay. Grian looked down at his feet. A shadow passed the window, followed by 2 more as he looked up, seeing 3 figures landing not far from the front door. That was fast. Clara tilted her head before going to the door. Grian said nothing as she opened the front door, the 3 figures appearing a moment later. 2 of the figures wore the cautious camouflaged uniforms. In between them was Joel, his expression as smooth as stone. The trio slipped inside, Clara greeting each of them before closing the door behind her. Everyone will be here shortly. Why don't you have a seat? Thank you, Joel smiled, the expression softening as he turned to the couch where Grian and Liam were sitting. How's you two been? Fine, Grian lifted his chin. Or as fine as one can be, with many of our own injured. That's why we're here, one of the protectors grunted. You're going to need all the help you can get, in more ways than one. Grian frowned, watching Joel take a seat in front of the window as the 2 protectors stood on either side of him. What do you mean? I'll tell you when everyone's here, Joel promised, nodding over at Clara. It's news best told once. It's best told once. Unease pricked inside him as Grian scooted an inch closer to Liam. The boy gave him a reassuring smile, but Grian couldn't find it in himself to smile back. The unease only grew when the others started arriving. First the boys, Haley, Chip, and Pulse, Pearl and Scar not far behind. Matthias was the last to arrive, coming through the front door and standing in front of it, like he was guarding it. And this is the end of this book, but it's not the end of the whole thing. Obviously, there's a ton more still to go, so yeah, get ready. It's going to be a long one. It's about as long as season Clockwork turned out to be. Not quite 600 pages yet, but we're already at 400. And I'm already getting close to finishing this story. We're at 400. We might be able to reach 500, but I don't think it'll go to 600 this time. I have written a novel at this point, so there's that. It is what it is. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Let me know any theories you might have, any ideas that you might want to bring about, and any questions. If you have any questions about the story, about any of the characters, or what's going on, even where some of the characters are, because, like, yeah, I don't, have I have an idea where everybody is, but I don't know where every single YouTuber is, especially since, I can't put everybody in there, in these books, out there somewhere. But yeah, Hermits, pretty easy enough. Yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one, whatever that might be. Goodbye.